That's what the shadow aspect, if we don't address it, it will sabotage our lives. It's not what people like to hear, but that's what results in burnout if you don't address your shadow aspects. You're listening to Give Yourself Some Leeway with me, your host, Eugene Lee. Over the last 5 years, through my burnout experience, podcasting, and coaching, I have learned a lot about burnout recovery as a high achiever. What to do, what not to do, and the common mistakes that many people, like myself, make along the way. This podcast is dedicated to help you break the burnout cycle, optimize your life for peak performance when you need it most, and rediscovering how to truly enjoy living again. That's the key to your growth and success. It really comes as no surprise that high achievers are among the highest rate of burnout in the workplace. Behind that shiny exterior that people see, oh, the high achiever is always getting the accomplishments and the awards, and they have the status and the authority, and they're the leaders. But behind all of that is a sense of inadequacy or imposter syndrome and never feeling good enough. Is that your definition of success? I can say this because that's where I came from. That was my experience when I burnt out, was from almost 10 years of striving to be successful, to be the best in my field, to be good at what I do, to feel enough. I didn't feel enough. And no matter how much I strived, I was never enough. And this is the shadow aspect of the high achiever. And when I talk about the shadow aspect, this is Carl Jung's work on shadow work. And the best way that I can describe this is like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So Dr. Jekyll was highly esteemed, an authority in his field, wealth, status, everything. And his work was to abolish or purify himself of the shadow aspect of himself, this new alter ego, which resulted as a result of his experiments, was Mr. Hyde. And Mr. Hyde was all the shadowy, dark aspects of Dr. Jekyll, the ones that he had pushed down and suppressed and tried to hide away. And his detriment, his downfall, was that by trying to suppress everything down and get rid of it, he ended up bringing all of those emotions to the surface and being overwhelmed and overcome by the shadow aspects of himself because he never allowed himself to regulate this emotion, this behavior, this dark part of himself, because he never allowed himself to control or understand the shadow aspect. It overtook him and took control of his life. It became a new identity. And that's what the shadow aspect, if we don't address it, it will sabotage our lives. It's not what people like to hear, but that's what results in burnout if you don't address your shadow aspects, especially as a high achiever. You're almost guaranteed to experience burnout in your career. So what do the shadow aspects of the high achiever look like? Well, if you look at what are the shiny sides of the high achiever, that they're constantly looking for achievement and always looking for the next goal. Well, where does that come from? For me, that was from a feeling of never being good enough. Why did it always feel like I was working long hours? I was working 12-hour shifts, 4 or 5 days a week. And even at that, it didn't feel good enough. I wanted to go back to university part-time while working full-time. And even at that, that wasn't enough. I went back to university and then into my second year of going part-time to college was another opportunity came up to study another course. So while I went back to study quality management, another degree in food science came up. And I was like, well, I can't turn this opportunity down. I'm going to take on two degrees at once, part time, while working full time, because it gave me that sense of achievement, of striving for more. And while people thought that it was completely psychotic what I was trying to achieve, it fueled me more in a way to be like, well, if no one else is doing this, it gives me validation that this is something that I can achieve. Because in my identity as a high achiever, this was me pushing my limit. And more, yes, it definitely was me pushing my limit, but not in a good sense. It literally pushed me to my limit. That I was constantly trying to strive for more, pushing myself beyond my capacity. And even at the end of that, even after I graduated from both quality management and from food science, about a month later after my graduation, I said, what's next? I was looking up more courses. What's the next thing I can go on to? Constantly striving for more. And where was that coming from? It was from feeling not good enough with what I had achieved already, not feeling fulfilled. And that comes into my second point beyond feeling inadequate. The other shadow aspect is tying your identity to the work that you do. And this comes back to if someone introduces themselves, what's the first thing they say? I say, "Hi, I'm Eugene," and straight after comes my job role. What do? You talk about the work you do. What's your career title? And that title becomes part of your identity. When someone asks you who you are, and your first response is your job title, if that job title is taken away from you, who are you? And that's a difficult question for a lot of people to answer. Without your job, your current career, who are you as a person, as an individual? By taking away that job title, the high achiever feels like they're not producing, they're not providing, they're not progressing, they're not excelling in their career, in their life. It takes away that sense of psychological safety that if they can't give themselves that status, that title, it makes them feel worthless. By constantly putting yourself into your work. And this is something that hustle culture sees as a badge of honor. But if you're constantly putting yourself into working all the time, you're going to be on autopilot. You're going to escape into your work rather than dealing with your emotions or any thoughts that come up. Any negativity, you can just push it aside and go straight into the work and knuckle down. But if you don't regulate those emotions, you won't know how to process them when they come up. You get overwhelmed by the smallest things. You find yourself procrastinating, and procrastination is a defense mechanism because your body is craving psychological safety. If you don't know how to express your emotions, you will lose your emotional resilience and you will become emotionally exhausted or emotionally numb to the smallest things if you don't know how to regulate those. That's another shadow aspect of the high achiever. Not being able to regulate your emotions or feeling mentally and emotionally exhausted by the smallest of tasks. Another thing with chasing high status and meeting society's expectations by faking it until you make it. It's like imposter syndrome on steroids, that it gives you a sense of, okay, I've achieved this level of status. People think I am successful, or people think that I have everything, but I still feel like nothing. And I don't want to tell anyone that, or I don't want to seek help because they'll see me as an imposter. Living with that mask on holds a lot of people back from deep social and personal connection and spiritual connection with others because they're afraid of being found out. And what comes with that? If you're living in this bubble of, I don't know how to express how I feel, I don't know who I can reach out to tell how I feel, I know I feel worthless. No matter what I do, I never feel good enough, but I don't know how to overcome this on my own. But I must overcome this on my own because I don't want to tell anyone about it, because I don't want to be seen as a failure. This is the shadow aspect, the dark side of the high achiever. This is one of the biggest hurdles it takes to overcome for burnout recovery. In order to break the burnout cycle, it requires this identity shift. And here's the catch: those shadow aspects of you are not the dark side of you. They're not the evil villain that you're trying to push down and be like, no, I cannot express those because they're going to hold me back. The shadow aspects are parts of you. They're not bad parts of you. They are parts of you that served a purpose once. They are parts of you that came to protect you, to defend you at a certain point in your life. But those mechanisms, those triggers no longer serve you where you are now. Most of those triggers came from your childhood. They protected you as a child. And now you've developed so much more since then. And these parts of yourself are trying to trigger those safety mechanisms, those safety responses to protect you from harm in the workplace. But you've grown a lot since then. And those parts of you no longer serve you. So rather than shying away from them or suppressing them, you need to shine a light on those shadow aspects. You need to understand, what role did those shadow parts of you play in your past life, in when you were younger, when you were a child? Discover, where did these parts of you originate? What is the narrative of those parts? And if they no longer serve you, why do they still have such control over you? What narrative can you replace them with? Acknowledge your shadow parts, bring them to awareness, bring them into the light, and understand how they used to serve you, how they no longer serve you, and what can you replace them with? What serves you now? This is part of the burnout recovery blueprint. The first part of breaking the cycle is about breaking that identity, having that identity shift. If you cannot break these shadow aspects, the control that they have over your narrative, then you will not be able to break the burnout cycle. This is where the self sabotaging behaviors and the limiting beliefs lie. So, how do I address or become aware of these shadow aspects of myself? How do I know that something's holding me back? How do I know that something's no longer serving me? Here are three questions I want you to ask yourself. Three questions, and I want you to take out a notebook and write down the answers. Because just like journaling, this is something that only with self reflection can you overcome this self sabotaging side of yourself. And a lot of people feel that they can try to do this on their own. This is how I started off my burnout recovery. And it took me over 3 years to get there, to actually figure out what was holding me back. All this trial and error and trying everything from yoga, meditation to running and all this exercise. And some things served me and some things really did not. And the journey did not have to be so long if I had proper guidance. But part of that was I needed someone to help me reflect on the shadow aspects of myself, the parts that I did not want to address, the parts that I held on as part of my identity. It's what made me who I was. And yes, it made me who I was, but not who I wanted to be. So here are the three questions. When was the last time that you felt satisfied with your accomplishments? When was the last time that you felt truly satisfied with what you had accomplished without immediately thinking about the next goal? How do you define your self-worth outside of your professional achievements? How do you define your self-worth outside of your professional achievements? And what are you sacrificing in pursuit of your definition of success? What are you sacrificing in your pursuit of your definition of success? That's what holds a lot of people back, is that they don't understand what their definition of success is. They're constantly chasing goals of growth and success defined by who they look up to or comparing to others and seeing, oh, well, they're achieving this. So if I achieve that too, I'll be happy. And then they get there and they're like, oh, or they're somewhere along the path and they feel that it's not really aligned with them. But they believe that, oh, once I achieve this, then I'll be happy, just like them. Ask yourself these three questions. When was the last time you felt truly satisfied with your accomplishments? How do you define your self-worth outside of your professional achievements? And what are you sacrificing in pursuit of your definition of success? Let that sit with you. Write those answers out and reflect on it. Is that how you want to be? Is that how you're showing up for the world? If you want to go deeper on this, join the Burnout Blueprint, the Burnout Recovery Blueprint. It's here in the show notes. Let's jump on that call. Until next week, take care. If you're feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, stuck in a rut, or running in circles all the time, trust me, I've been there too. The pursuit for peak performance, especially as a high achiever, is not about pushing harder all the time. It's about learning to work smarter, find balance, and reignite that spark that got you started in the first place. That's why I developed the Burnout Recovery Blueprint. Join me for 12 weeks to overcome your burnout. Let's break the burnout cycle and restore your vitality. Develop sustainable habits proven for peak performance when you need it most. Rediscover the meaning and purpose in the work that you do. And boost your productivity and impact without sacrificing your health. If you're ready to invest in your personal growth and success, let's break the burnout cycle together. Let's work together. Let's have that call. The link is in the show notes. Until next week, take care.